Alrighty, so I figured I would go over the the monsters that just came out 2 days ago, and let you guys know it's basically the same spawn as before. So the same things apply. It's going to be like 850 gems. Let's talk about each of these monsters. And I wouldn't recommend spawning either of these. If you spawn the ultra rare, you're basically never guaranteed a monster. So, Yoshiko is the first one. She hits 10 times, which is good, but her ability power is way too weak. No piercing either. Even though she does hit for both physical and magical damage, don't really expect her to be killing. And that is mostly because it is very easy to stack Dark and Star Element. So yeah, you'd really need something closer to 1,000. Because keep in mind, Pandora basically does the same thing, but penetrates and hits for over 1,000 10 times, right? So, and the reason why Pandora used to do so much is also due to the field, the Nebulous Eclipse. So there's a lot of negative aspects of this monster. I don't think it nearly pulls the same DPS weight. Diffusion is good, quite unique to this type of monster too. You don't often see diffusion with like a bunch of other strange things, but let's talk about it. So you get this two of the ability using effects. These are unique effects. They can't be dispelled as far as I at least when they first came out, they couldn't be dispelled. I imagine they still can't be dispelled like through debuff removal or whatever, except for things like Time Slice. But these are super unique. There are hardly any monsters that do them, and I believe they apply separately as like a second instance of Unigain, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Regardless, they used to be really, really good for your team. In fact, they were considered so good when they first came out like 5 years ago or 7 years ago or something like that, that they were considered so strong that they would only apply to yourself. So yeah, just to put it in perspective, they were really strong and they're not really strong anymore. They're kind of, you know what I mean? Like, they don't have the same type of impact. They're a little bit outdated, to be honest. Serenity is really good, and that is a really interesting aspect. A lot of the 2 out of these 3 monsters give Serenity. Serenity is really powerful, especially for guild battle. If you throw a Serenity monster and then the enemies time slice you, the allies on our team who aren't throwing Uni instantly gain Uni, because it fills your Uni gauge to 100 when it expires. So it's a really nice turnaround mechanic. I've always been a really big fan of Serenity. Ambush is a pretty, one of the best bubbles. So that's good, at least. 50k, Psychological Contamination, and Paralysis. Neither of these are super used. Paralysis is more used than Psychological Contamination. Psychological Contamination is the one that disables random abilities on your side. Most of the time, it's not even that useful because you have multiple effects usually taking place. 1,000 light defense is good. It's a total of 2,000 because it gives you 1,000 against Dark and Time. So that's nice. And then Blessing is also pretty good. 50% down cooldown reductions is nice. So yeah, and the healing is also really nice on the Blessing. It's worth pointing out, at least nowadays. So when it comes to PvE, I think Yoshiko is pretty bad. I would say she is a 2 out of 10 because she gives Diffusion and Ambush. The Blessing can also be considered in that 2 out of 10. But especially for free-to-play players and for new players, she's basically garbage. And in fact, I would never use her or recommend getting her for free-to-play players or new players if you're into quests, because she doesn't give any damage buffs. And she's not really going to help you live. She doesn't give crest. She doesn't give field. She's basically useless in PvE. When it comes to PvP, the diffusion is nice. There are quite a few instances where diffusion could win you a PvP match. The ambush is also very good. There are some abilities like Lance Flash that are really fast abilities and can be spammed super easily. And 2 Lance Flashes can... you can get 2 Lance Flashes off in the same time that you can get many Mage and Soldier abilities off. That's why Lancer is one of the most powerful classes in the game. So there are instances where this is really good. All things considered, though, you are neither getting buffs that will help you kill the enemies or penetrating effects. You're also not getting field denies, or uni boosting. You're also not getting a crest, which is super valuable for the HP that it gives. Overall, this is pretty garbage. I would say a solid 4 out of 10 when it comes to PvP. Mainly because it can do some damage, and if you have other people throwing with you, there's a good chance that throwing a diffusion monster is safe. And I like that. I like safe. Diffusion is a game-winning effect in PvP. Now, when it comes to first round guild battle, when we're talking about like on racers, I would never use this. 0 out of 10. If we're talking about if you're currently losing and you anticipate the enemies throwing monsters, the Serenity is okay, but I wouldn't count on it. Again, something like 4 out of 10. It's not a really excellent turnaround monster. It doesn't really protect you. You're missing crest for that solo HP gain, but it's okay. The HP regeneration on the Blessing is notable. When it comes to like a clash, using this for actual clashes and damage, it's not the worst, but it really isn't that good either. You could use it for time like Dark Star. The diffusion is nice. The damage is okay, especially if you get off like Queen and you have a Nebulous Eclipse. She would probably kill all the enemies, but there's a setup there. You'd have to coordinate with your team. I do like that she does a lot of damage. So a solid 3 out of 10 when it comes to Clash. If you have a really excellent Clash setup with Queen, something like that, she could be like a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, as long as she's thrown in the right order so that she actually can kill. But yeah, again, her ability power is just a little bit too low. And I don't think that she is viable right now. That's kind of been the theme for a lot of these monsters, is that they're pretty garbage. Let's look at her effect. Alright, she basically just points. And then Hanamaru? Maru? Yeah, it's not English, so it's going to be hard for me. She hits 5 times, does 800 ability power. That's much higher, but again, dark, so easy to stack light and star. So not too impactful. The Frozen is actually pretty unique. If you don't know, Frozen reduces your current attack and magic attack stats by 50 when it's applied once, and then it increases to like 75 and then 90. And it can stack up to 3 times. So it's a super oppressive buff, super underused. It also has a secondary effect that applies something similar to paralysis, but it's a much lower percent than paralysis. There's a chance that when you use an ability, it just doesn't go off, and it puts your ability on cooldown. So it is a very oppressive buff, and it is a very strong debuff. The question of whether or not it'll land is dependent on whether or not you're throwing monsters that reduce the enemy's status element resistance, but generally people don't prioritize Frozen, so I do like Frozen. Between Frozen and Scorching, I do think that in this current meta, where if you're hardly ever going to kill the enemies outright, especially whale-to-whale guilds, the likelihood of you killing all of the enemies is much lower. So it's much, much safer to apply things like the second effect, which is a prohibit uni. Because if both of you are just going to get your unis off, the one who throws the uni block is usually going to win, which is what we saw in the last GGT. They essentially won by uni blocking the entire enemy team on round 1, even though both teams both threw 5 unis. So uni prohibit is top tier. Now, where Frozen kind of fits into that is if you're not gonna necessarily land uni prohibit, the Frozen, for anybody left, the likelihood that they can kill you with far fewer stats is greatly diminished. So Frozen is a nice insurance plan in case they can't kill you, to make it so that they can't kill you after the uni, which I like. Now the defense skill mastery, also very unique. Mastery is more valuable than it was in the past, and that is mostly because one-shotting is quite difficult now. In many instances, now that doesn't necessarily mean it's impossible. You can still get one shot, but especially after a uni, the mastery might actually come into effect, which is nice. Cost, speed, and uni gains, they're both okay. Flank is, in my opinion, the third best. Wait, no, not. Wait, does flank? I thought it. Oh, all stats by 100. Okay, yeah. Flank is the third best. I couldn't remember. I thought it was the black one, the newest one, but I couldn't remember the name of that. It was just slipping my mind. But yeah, flank is a pretty good bubble. Among all the bubbles, it's not bad. We have a new thing, something called it's a field effect. Something called Stronghold Tactics. 150% stats, increases max HP by 150. That's really good. Doubles Unison gauge gains by damage received from enemy players. That is very impactful considering the fact that most players aren't going to be getting one shot after Crystal or after unis because of the massive HP buff that we've had, so it's kind of interesting. Reduces Unison attack damage received by 30%. I do like that. However, I would want this on a monster that is a priority monster, and I would also want it with field protect, something like that. That would be top tier. 50k lethargy and frail resistance by 60. Neither of those have been super impactful as of late, but they are worth mentioning. They basically make it so you can't offense or defense proc. Dark defense, I've already talked about. It's the same as light defense. It's okay. It's not the best, but double would have been better. This is the second monster that gives Serenity. However, I do think that this monster is much, much better. Just the fact that it gives a field already puts it above a lot of the other monsters. It also gives pretty unique things like Frozen and Uni Prohibit is very valuable currently. As well as some interesting buffs. I don't think the cost gain or the uni gain are particularly noteworthy. However, the field may be impactful and the mastery could be situationally good. I think she's a really nice defensive buff and negator currently in the current meta, but however, I don't think her longevity is good, especially in guild battles. So let's talk about it specifically for PvE players. When it comes to questing, this monster doesn't do anything. So the Stronghold Tactics is about it, and the Serenity is okay. So, I mean, like, What do you want? What do you want me to say about it? It's just a field monster. There are better monsters in the free monsters that come out. There are better monsters. 4 out of 10. I mean, it gives a pretty good field. It gives a pretty good bubble, and it gives mastery. I guess help to keep you alive, but that's about it. As far like late game PvE, she's 0 out of 10. You would never use this monster ever for any reason in a lot of the late game PvE content, because you want to clear things as fast as possible, and she just doesn't give you damage. So when it comes to PvP, her damage is pretty good. The Frozen and Prohibit are really good. The Unison gauge gains, the flank, and the stronghold tactics. She's a nice monster. However, and the Serenity's good too. The thing that's really missing here is uni boosting your team, protecting your field, applying an enemy field, like crest. You know, things that are super impactful in PvP. We're also missing diffusion and penetration. She's a really nice defensive monster, and I want to give her an 8 out of 10 because I love defensive monsters. When I play games, I play defensive characters. I play the tanks. I like the thick ones. Like, give me defensive monsters. The problem is that in the history of Unison League, defensive monsters have never been meta, and they have never worked. The game has always been dominated by extreme damage, fast gameplay, and the stronger the buffs, the better. And because of that, I cannot give her anything above a 5. She may end up being a sleeper pick, but I don't see that happening. Yeah. This monster, solid 3 out of 10 when it comes to general PvP. Now, when it, like, as a solo throw, now if you're round 3 and everyone's throwing, you can bump her up to a solid 6 out of 10, just because the Prohibit Unison might land, as well as clearing fields and field effects in general are quite powerful when everyone's throwing Unisons. So clearing like field protects or negative fields are always very valuable. So yeah, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 maybe, when it comes to third round PvP, or if lots of people are throwing unis. But she doesn't do anything alone, which is really sad. The current meta is, there's basically no such thing as a racer, but I still kind of talk in the old sense of racers. Everyone's just kind of building as a team right now, but first round, usually for something like a racer, I actually like this monster a lot in the current meta. I would rank her solidly at a 9 out of 10 because you're generally throwing a priority monster that gives you field and field protect. And then you're hoping that you win the clash, and you're hoping you don't die either. But the enemies are most likely going to try to throw double nebulous monsters to apply a nebulous field and then try to kill you or uni-lock you, as well as strip you guys. So they're going to apply things like time slicing monsters that get rid of all of your buffs, and then they're going to try to stun lock you and prevent you from fighting back with your unis, as well as applying things like Prohibit Unison. So in that aspect, I do think this monster is top tier. Even if you lose and you're like, this is the only monster that you guys get to throw, it is a powerful monster. I mean, applying a field or clearing a field in many cases will be quite valuable. Flank is really good. Mastery and Frozen are both very oppressive monsters, and even if you win the clash, she's also pretty good. She applies Prohibit Unison, which is another monster that that, can lock down the enemies. She applies stuff like Serenity, that if they double time slice you or single time slice you, there's a chance that you can uni again. And she applies very unique buffs like Mastery. So in many aspects, I do think she's a 9 out of 10 in the current meta. However, if we talk about traditional guild battles, and in Clash, she's also a 9 out of 10. It basically falls in the same section. Now, if we talk about like traditional type of solo racer roles, she does fall far short. And I do think she is a top tier turnaround monster, but we'll get to that in a second. So if you are racing and you throw this monster, she's not that great. Really, when you have a solo racer or 2 racers on your team, in round 1, you're trying to get them at uni as fast as possible and then boost off of that and continuously uni chain with uni boosting. She doesn't give any uni boost, which is really bad. I mean, this right here, the Unison Gauge gains, is good, but it is not equivalent to giving your team 50 uni, giving all of your allies 50 uni. It's not equivalent. So I think that she's good, but she can't be the first throw. I would say that she's solidly in the 7 out of 10 range. She's probably, if not the best monster that's come out so far in this Love Live section, she's probably one of the best. Now, if you're currently losing the round 1, like the enemies have thrown a bunch of monsters, or you're about, like, that they just threw a monster that applies 50 uni, and that they're about to throw other monsters, and you have this monster, she is a pretty solid turnaround monster. I mean, like, she applies Frozen, which is nice. She applies Unison Prohibit, which could potentially lock them down, but probably not if they're throwing a bunch of monsters. She applies Mastery, Flank, and a Field, all pretty good stuff. And Serenity, which if they end up throwing more monsters, they could end up stripping it accidentally and then giving your whole team uni. So if they don't kill you, there's a high chance that she can turn things around. In many aspects, I do like her. It's a super niche type of throw, but I do think that she has some value. I think she's a solid 9 out of 10 again for potential turtle strats or like turnaround strats, some kind of defensive monster throw. Now, with that being said, I do want to reiterate, never in all of Unison League have defensive monsters ever been top tier. So take everything with that I say with a grain of salt. However, I do want to point out that during the what was the name of that? Hang on. It was like Imminence and Shadow. Yeah, this one. During this event, there was a priority monster that was Fire Epsilon. She was the only priority monster ever to apply one of the most unique debuffs in the entire game, which is healing down by 100%. She prevented the enemies from healing. And the reason why I say that this is really important is because at the time, healing was irrelevant. It was a non-factor at all. In fact, healing monsters in general were so garbage that she was completely skipped over. But at the time, you can go back to this, I said that she has the potential to be a sleeper pick and to be one of the best monsters in the entire game if they made some changes, given the fact that HP can stack endlessly. They have made those changes, and she is one of the best characters in the game. If you don't currently know, healing cannot be removed from anything, and it cannot be affected by anything other than healing effects. So for example, if you have minus 100% healing on yourself, the only way to get rid of that is by applying healing up to you through a buff or waiting for it to time out. There's no way to remove it, and there's no way to alter it either. So And she's a priority monster, which means that if the enemies are throwing 10 or 5 monsters and you're throwing 5 monsters, she's always going off. She is a really, really good monster, especially in the current meta where healing is super valuable. So, in the same sense, this monster, I'm not saying that she has the same potential, but she has the same kind of feel, in my opinion, where she is good now. There's a chance that she's still good in later aspects, but she's a very unique monster, and just for that, I do like her. So I'm just bringing a comparison, even if some of these monsters, I mean, like most of these monsters are pretty bad, but there's always the chance that some of them become really valuable. In the current meta, she's really valuable. In future metas, if we ever go back to what we've been doing for like the last 20 years, she's going to become bad again. But in the current meta, she is good. That's what she looks like. All right, Ruby. Ruby's wind hits 5 times, 800, pierces. That's pretty good. Applies beguilement. If you don't know, beguilement is the effect that if you apply it to the enemies, and then whenever you attack the enemies and you would feed them uni, you also take advantage of that. So if you kill the enemy and you give them 100% uni from killing them, you gain 100% uni. So it's a duplication ability of uni gain from getting attacked. Unison engaged by 50 on enemies and removes 50 cost. It's kind of interesting. The healing and the double healing, CP and HP healing, these are both super valuable now. And this reduces Unison engage gains. There's no way to get 100% uni reduction and 100% cost reduction currently, but you can get pretty close. So somebody's going to have to sacrifice something somewhere. And I do like that this monster applies both of them. Plus healing is also pretty good. Applies Rampart. Rampart's not great. It is what it is, though. Nebulous Eclipse. Now, this is what I'm talking about. So, Nebulous Eclipse is in a weird spot. It doesn't guarantee... I think they changed something about the way that it does nullification constant effects, because the damage is just not it doesn't feel the same, at least. It could just be the massive HP bars that we have now, but it's nice that we get another Nebulous Eclipse monster. 50k. Blind and prohibit Unison by 70. These are both super valuable. Blind used to be super, super oppressive, and people hated it. So they basically stopped using blind in many aspects, but you can still find it on very meta characters like ninjas, for example. So blind, super valuable still, but the main one is prohibit Unison resistance. This has always been meta. So just for the fact that you can use this as a backline 5 monster is quite good. The wind is also nice. A lot of people are throwing water monsters to counteract Pandora, but the fact that this monster can also apply the Nebulous Eclipse might change up the water, wind, fire meta, so we'll have to kind of see. And then Rage is okay. Overall, this monster is really interesting. When it comes to PvE, this monster is the worst monster I've seen in a long time. There's basically nothing here but healing. You don't even have CP. Yeah, you're basically just throwing this for the Nebulous Eclipse, which isn't bad. It is a rare debuff, so it's a good damage debuff, but it's pretty bad. Yeah, I would say that this is a solid 3 out of 10, especially for free-to-play players. Now, when it comes to late-game PvE, late-game questing, small things like a Nebulous Eclipse are game-changing. The increased damage when broken and increased damage from critical strikes, these are game-changing effects. So just for that fact, this has the potential to be a 10 out of 10 late game PvE monster with the condition that your team is competent and is throwing all of the other buffs that you would need. The crest, the 200%, the field, the ability power boost, the crit boost, like everything else your team must be supplying, because this monster does not supply anything but Nebulous Eclipse. So just keep that in mind. Stuff like, the absolute, the triple procking, elevation, everything. Everything, this monster doesn't do anything except for Nebulous Eclipse. But if you're late game PvE and you are min-maxing to the maximum, this is a really good debuff. So it's a really good enemy field for damage. All right. When it comes to PvP, this is a really hard one to place. The best strategy in PvP is that if the enemies are dead, they can't fight back. The next best strategy is if the enemies are uni-locked, they can't uni back, but so you can just attack them willy-nilly and not worry about it. And the third best strategy is to just out-tank them. So characters like Rooks, healing over time effects, defense effects, fortification, that's the order, right? And the best way to kill the enemies is with unis. It's the safest way. You apply something like Nebulous Eclipse and you just kill them. The problem is, if you're throwing this as a solo uni, the likelihood that you're able to kill the enemies is really diminished. So you look to secondary things like diffusion, penetration, stuff like from Twilight or Kijin. You're wanting 200% buff, crit buff. You're wanting like some kind of buff plus diffusion so that you can kill the enemies. This monster does apply the Nebulous Eclipse, but it doesn't apply the uni boosting or really anything else. It falls kind of in the latter aspect, a third option, which is kind of a defensive play with all this healing, and then also the Nebulous Eclipse kind of boosting you, and the Rage kind of boosting you. It's really not that great, to be honest. The Beguilement's really interesting. You have the potential to throw this monster and then throw another monster. So, as like a solo player. So, in many aspects I like it. In many aspects I dislike it. It's kind of situational, and depending on the build, if you intentionally build for something like that, there's a chance that it works. But in many instances, the Beguilement doesn't land or doesn't work properly. So, especially with this current meta where it's hard to one-shot the enemies, that's the classic method, is to apply Beguilement, one-shot them so that you don't have to worry about them uniing, and then now you have uni and you uni. Overall, this monster isn't bad for a solo throw. I think it's a solid 6 out of 10 for a solo throw. The uni down and cost down is really annoying, plus the Beguilement can have the potential to uni chain. And then for yourself, obviously, the Nebulous Eclipse can be super oppressive. The CP, HP can be super good defensively for healing. So yeah, there's a lot of aspects that I really like about this monster. But it's missing Beguilement, it's missing penetration, missing buffs and field and crest, things that will help you keep alive and kill your enemies. So, yeah. Now when it comes to round 3, 5v5 kind of throwing monsters around, this monster is incredibly good. The healing alone is going to be ticking every 5 seconds. That means that when you throw your uni, it'll go off, and then the enemy's uni will deal damage, and then while your next uni is going off, you're getting ticked up. And then while the enemy's uni is going off, you're getting ticked up again with HP, and it just continuously ticks you up. So it's very, very oppressive. I think this is in this current meta, I like this monster a lot for the 5v5. I would say this is a solid 8 out of 10. When lots of unis are going all over the place, and you have things like Rooks, and it's like when there's chaos, healing is incredibly powerful nowadays. And the Nebulous Eclipse on top is it's really good. This monster is not going to be a killing monster, but if it can set up an ally to just one-shot the enemy, so good. Anyway, when it comes to the current PvP, like Guild Battle first round meta, It's a very interesting monster. I struggle to say that this is on the same level as Pandora, but it does open up a whole list of new counter strategies to Pandora, because a lot of people are throwing water to counter Pandora, but now you can throw wind to counter the water that's countering Pandora. But I don't think that a lot of people are going to get this monster just in general. The Beguilement, again, is pretty good for round one, especially considering that a lot of people aren't dying round one. And you, with 5 people and a whole team setup, you can definitely land Beguilement a lot easier on the enemies, especially for racers or for anyone else, really, if you're throwing as a 5-man. The uni gauge and cost gauge reduction are only applicable if the enemies aren't racing as fast as you are. But currently there is, the current meta is everyone on your team is racing equally quickly. So that'll probably end up changing. But the HP is actually a really, really big deal. The main reason is because oftentimes people aren't going to die. And after all of the unis, there's always that period where you matched unis. And it takes about 15 seconds for that to go off. That's a lot of CP and HP healing. That is like full HP and a lot of your CP back. And after unis, you're probably at close to 40 million HP or higher. She's really good. She's really good just from the HP perspective in the current meta. The Nebulous Eclipse is also good, applying oppressive fields, preventing them from gaining buffs. There is a nice bit of flexibility here. I do like her in many aspects. Now, if you are racing, she's not the greatest. You're missing things like uni boosts on your team, but they're, yeah. So as a solo racer or a secondary racer, she's okay. She is a solid 5 out of 10. She is missing uni boosts, but I do like a lot of the aspects that she does. She gives the healing, she does reduction, she applies Beguilement so that they can uni again, and she applies the Nebulous Eclipse, which can set up your team for one-shotting the enemies. There's some good stuff here. As a turnaround monster, she's pretty bad. The HP healing isn't going to be enough. The likelihood Beguilement does anything is going to be low because the enemies were considering their uniing. And the Nebulous Eclipse doesn't oppress them in the same way that some of the other fields could. Yeah. I think that this monster is really valuable, though, in the current meta, where it's 5v5, similar to a Clash. And in many instances, I think that this monster is a solid 8 out of 10. She doesn't, alone, she doesn't do a lot of damage. She also doesn't give a ton of buffs or anything like that. But the healing is nice, especially in this current meta. And the Nebulous Eclipse flexibility to counter the water that's currently countering the Pandora is top tier. She's also a very, very good monster in the fact that she gives uni-prohibit resistance. There are lots of these monsters that give this, but she is one of them. And the fact that she can be frontline 5 or your backline 5 monster gives some nice longevity and flexibility to her. Overall, I do like her. Yeah, so for clashes, especially with a good team and proper strategy, she could be a solid 7 out of 10. Now, you probably wouldn't want to throw 2 of these, but you have a chance if you throw like wind and fire to beat something that's throwing, for example, wind or fire and water, depending on the 2 and the 3. 3 wind and 3 water. You see what I mean? There's a chance that you win it, so I like the flexibility. All right. And this is her. And that is pretty much it. So yeah, I think that this batch of monsters is a step up over the previous batch, but we will see. There's 9 girls, so there should be 3 more coming in the next day or two. Hopefully they are better than the current monsters that we've seen. As you know, I'm comparing a lot of these monsters to previous monsters. If we compare these guys to monsters that we've seen previously, like, oh, not this one, like Queen, I mean, she time slices, prohibits Unison, applies rejection, sets their cost to 30. Uni boosts your team and Nebulous Eclipse. I mean, even in PvE, this is like a 10 out of 10 monster. Plus she applies Kijin. Like, these are just non-comparable, right? I want a monster like Queen to come out because these current, all the girls so far have been kind of underwhelming. Especially for longevity. It's kind of disappointing for all the Love Live fans. So I want to see some better stuff. All right, I'll catch you guys later.